Today we're going to be talking all about Lonatharil. Hey, welcome! I'm LeilaFox. Today's lore story video is for Lonatharil. Lonatharil is the brand new legendary High Elf champion that happens to be the Fusion Fragment champ for August 2022. Now, this is a tough fusion for sure. It's very akin to a Brogni where you have to get fragments, fuse champs, and then level ascend and fuse to be able to get Lonatharil. But overall, he seems like a very interesting champ, particularly that he has a shield that's not removable when you have some of your allies that are dead. So it does make him very interesting, but again, a lot of people are up in the air as opposed to whether they want to get him or not. So before we get into his lore story, let's check out the lore for the High Elf faction as a whole. High Elves originate in Aravia, where they have built a wondrous shimmering city. Living in these lands of plenty has enabled them to evolve their society to the highest degree of physical, intellectual, and spiritual achievement. High principled, they welcome exiles and offer them new homes further east. Let's get into the lore story for Lonatharil from the Tolarian Lore Book of Champions. To this day, the High Elves sing laments for Lonatharil, though many generations have passed away into the night since last he trod the realm of mortals. Keen was his sword, and splendid was his armor of midnight black with sunlit gilt. A crown he wore upon his brow, one wrought in gold with peerless skill, and phoenix feathers were sewn into his raiment. For Lonatharil was the Basilius of all the elves, the last whose realm stood united against the threat of Siroth. It was the age of the great wars that saw his coming to the world, the age of mighty champions who knew well the darkness they faced. Born as the first son of Aravia's royal house, Lonatharil embraced his destiny to rule as soon as he could grasp the concept of honor and duty. Never one to hide behind his title, the young prince lived and trained with the warriors of the royal guard, and such was his eagerness that it impressed even the most cynical veterans. In those distant years, many portals lay dormant across Teleria. Once opened by the will of Siroth, these gateways to his realm were oft used by the demon spawn to invade and wreak destruction wherever their dark legions reached. Battling such minor incursions was Lonatharil's first true taste of command. Yet the attacks only grew in viciousness and strength over the decades. It was but a prelude to the greatest storm of an era. In time, Lonatharil succeeded his father and took upon himself the crown of Aravia, and soon after, the last great war was unleashed upon his kingdom. Siroth threw everything at Teleria, and the earth itself groans beneath the tread of demon spawn armies. Dire was the hour for mortal realms, and though the Arbiter stood by their side, the tide of war had favored the foe at first. The watch fortresses in the east had fallen, and the Basilius had to rally his hosts before the unholy horde could cross Valdemar Strait and bring death upon the heartland of Aravia. His allies could not be mustered in time, and Lonatharil could not bear the thought of subjecting his people to the honors of war. So he led his warriors across the sea and struck a mighty blow against the forces of the Dark Lord, stymieing them through courage and sacrifice. Lonatharil ever stood at the head of his mighty host and brought many a fell monster low. Alas, his star was not destined to shine forever. Far in the blasted barrens of the Stormwind Wasteland, he met his doom in battle, as a warrior king should. Grim and sorrowful was the homecoming of his warriors. Though their monarch had won a crucial respite for Teleria with his life, it was too great a loss for Aravia. Yet there was also hope, for a prophecy woven in those days speaks of Lonatharil's return when the night is darkest. So fierce was his spirit, the rhymes claim, it refused to pass on to the halls of eternity and instead fled to the Arbiter who breathed new life into him. And one day, the gracious Lonatharil shall be reborn as an immortal champion of light. Alright, that was the lore story for Lonatharil, and I have to say, having done many of these lore story videos, this is probably one of the first ones where they kill the champion off and they don't have him coming back. You know, we're not necessarily talking like the undead, for example. Like, you know, if you listen to my Scythian Rhodos story, you know, they talk about them being murdered and, you know, there's a lot that they go with that. If you listen to the Minea Coronar story, I won't spoil that, but someone dies there and the Arbiter brings that person back. So there are stories where the champion that the lore story is about either dies or is on the brink of death, and yet the Arbiter brings them back because of honorable things that they have done, where she sees use them as a champion of Teleria. But in this story, they actually kill off Lonatharil, which I found was very interesting compared to the other stories. However,
If you do pay attention to the last paragraph, where they talk about how he was basically too stubborn to die, that he fled to the Arbiter, and that the Arbiter will bring him back to life when he is needed the most, and that he'll be a champion for Teleria. It seems like there's a lot of hinting for a champ that would be coming in the future as well. So I don't know about you, but I'm really curious to see, you know, where that is going to turn up. Leave me some comments down below. What you think for the story for Lonatharil? Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.